I once sat across from a man who'd built 2 successful businesses, retired early, and still told me he felt broke. Not low on cash, broke in the way that keeps you up at night. He wasn't overspending. He didn't have a gambling problem. He just made 9 decisions quietly over 20 years that most finance channels never mention. And today I'm gonna walk you through all 9, because at least 3 of them are probably happening to you right now and you don't even know it. Here's the thing nobody tells you about building wealth in your 20s and 30s. It's rarely one big mistake that sinks you. It's a handful of quiet, reasonable sounding decisions that compound in the wrong direction for a decade before you notice. By the end of this video, you'll have a checklist, 9 specific traps, and I bet money you're already standing in at least one of them. Most personal finance advice obsesses over the small stuff. Skip the coffee, cook at home, cancel a subscription. And sure, that helps. But I want you to picture 2 people. Person A does everything right. Budgets carefully, avoids lattes, tracks every expense in a spreadsheet. Person B is a little messier with daily spending, but gets 4 or 5 bigger decisions right. 10 years later, person B is wealthier. Not close, meaningfully wealthier. Because wealth isn't destroyed in $6 increments. It's destroyed or built in a handful of structural decisions most people never even evaluate as financial decisions at all. Let me tell you about 2 guys, I'll call them Henry and Charles, who graduated the same year with nearly identical starting salaries. Henry took a job in his hometown because it was comfortable, close to family, and familiar. Charles moved to a city he'd never even visited for a job with a slightly lower starting offer, but a much larger industry footprint. 5 years later, Henry had gotten 2 modest raises and was earning about 15% more than his starting salary. Charles had switched companies twice, tripled his network, and was earning more than double his starting salary, not because he was smarter or worked harder, but because he'd unknowingly stumbled into the very first wealth killer on our list. Why does this happen? Because humans are wired for comfort and loss aversion in the short term, even when that safety quietly costs us in the long term. We don't feel the $40,000 we're not earning. We only feel the discomfort of an unfamiliar city or a harder conversation. That invisible cost is exactly why these wealth killers survive. They don't hurt today, they hurt in year 15. First killer, geographic inertia. Staying somewhere simply because it's familiar, not because it's strategically smart for your career, is one of the highest cost decisions you can make in your 20s, and almost nobody frames it that way. 2 things determine whether a location is good for your wealth: whether it has a deep bench of jobs in your field, and whether it's full of ambitious people you can learn from. Your first serious salary becomes the baseline every future negotiation builds from. So the city you plant that flag in matters more than almost any budgeting decision you'll make that year. Second killer, the comfort cash pile. Somewhere along the way, having savings turned into hoarding cash, and nobody drew the line for you. A healthy emergency fund covers 3 to 6 months of expenses. Beyond that, every extra dollar sitting in a low yield account isn't safety. It's a decision, whether you realize it or not, to trade long-term growth for short-term comfort. The math isn't close. Money that could compound at market rates for 20 years, sitting idle instead, can quietly cost you 6 figures by the time you'd actually need it. Third killer, choosing a partner on vibes alone. This is the one people get defensive about. So let's just say it plainly. Who you build a life with is a financial decision, whether anyone wants to admit that or not. It's not romantic to think about, but the numbers are hard to ignore. Separating finances, splitting assets, restarting from zero, these are some of the most expensive events a person can go through. And they're largely avoidable with the right amount of honesty up front, long before a ring is involved. Fourth killer, performing wealth you don't have. There's a version of success that's just a costume, the leased car, the credit-funded vacation, the outfit that costs more than the rent. The tragedy is that spending to look successful is often the single biggest obstacle to becoming successful, because every dollar spent performing wealth is a dollar that can't compound into real wealth. The people who actually end up wealthy are almost never the ones who looked wealthy at 25. Fifth killer, chasing cash over ownership. When you're offered a choice between a bigger paycheck and a stake in the company you work for, most people instinctively grab the cash. It feels safer, more real, more spendable. But ownership is the only form of compensation with no ceiling. A modest slice of the right company can outperform a decade of salary increases. The skill worth building here isn't picking the right startup. It's learning to actually evaluate what a stake is worth before you decide to trade it away for a slightly bigger paycheck. Sixth killer, waiting for the right time to invest. There is no perfect entry point, and the data on this is almost uncomfortable. A huge share of long-term market gains happen on a tiny handful of days that are impossible to predict. Sit on the sidelines, waiting for clarity, and you don't just miss some upside. You miss the days that mattered most. Time in the market beats timing the market, not as a cute slogan, but as a mathematical reality that punishes hesitation far more than it punishes bad luck. Seventh killer, staying loyal to a job that isn't paying you what you're worth. Loyalty feels like a virtue. Employers rarely reward it like one. Small annual raises compound far slower than most people assume. And a job you've outgrown can quietly cap your earning potential for a decade if you let comfort make the decision instead of data. The single fastest lever most people have for a meaningful pay jump isn't a raise request. It's a well-timed move to a new role that resets your value from scratch. Eighth killer, debt that works against you instead of for you. Not all debt is destructive. A mortgage or an education loan tied to real future earning power can be a legitimate tool. The danger is high interest debt with no asset behind it. The kind that silently taxes your future income before you ever see it. Every month that balance survives, it's not just costing you interest. It's costing you the version of your future where that money was building wealth instead of paying for a decision you've already forgotten. Ninth killer, buying a car like it's a personality trait. A car is one of the few purchases we let our ego negotiate for us instead of our calculator. Between the payment, the insurance, the depreciation, and the maintenance, a car can quietly become one of the largest recurring expenses in a young professional's life, one that provides zero return and guarantees a loss. You don't have to give up driving something decent. You just have to stop letting status decide the price tag. So here's what I'd actually do with this list. Pick the one killer from these 9 that made you slightly uncomfortable. That's usually the one that's actually happening to you. Then do one thing about it this month. Research your city's salary ceiling, cap your emergency fund, and invest the rest. Have one honest financial conversation with your partner. Evaluate one piece of equity you've been ignoring. Automate one investment instead of waiting. Apply to one new role. Pay off one high-interest balance. Or price out a 3-year-old used version of the car you're eyeing. Small, deliberate moves against the right problem beat frantic effort against the wrong one every time. Consider 2 coworkers with the same salary today. One drives a car that costs $850 a month all in and carries a $6,000 credit card balance at 22% interest. The other drives something 3 years older. No card balance, same commute. Over a decade, assuming nothing else changes, the second person isn't just a little ahead. They can be well over $100,000 ahead without earning a single extra dollar of income. Same job, same paycheck, wildly different outcome. That's the entire thesis of this video in one comparison. The biggest mistake I see people make isn't ignorance. Most people, if asked directly, would agree with everything on this list. The mistake is thinking these decisions are life decisions, separate from money decisions. They're the same decision. The city you live in, the person you marry, the job you stay loyal to, the car in your driveway. None of these show up on a budgeting app. And that's exactly why they're the wealth killers. Nobody catches until it's expensive to fix. To recap, geography sets your ceiling. Cash beyond your safety net is a cost, not a comfort. Partnership is a financial decision, whether you like it or not. Looking rich and being rich are opposites. Ownership beats salary when you can get it. Time in the market beats waiting for the perfect moment. Job loyalty without leverage caps your growth. High interest debt taxes your future. And a car should never be chosen by ego. None of these are complicated. All of them are easy to ignore, which is exactly why they're so dangerous. If you take nothing else from this video, take this. Wealth isn't usually destroyed by one dramatic mistake. It's destroyed by the decisions that felt too small, too personal, or too not financial to, the good news is the reverse is also true. Fix even 2 or 3 of these, and you don't just save money. You change the entire trajectory of the next 20 years. If one of these 9 hit uncomfortably close to home, tell me which one in the comments. I read every single one, and it genuinely shapes what I cover next. And if you want to keep building this kind of financial awareness, the next video walks through exactly how to evaluate whether your current city, job, or car is actually working for or against your long-term wealth. I think you'll want to watch that one next.